Hello, welcome team. In this video, we're looking at how to animate in Unreal, how to set up the layout, how to use the timeline, otherwise known as the sequencer, set some keyframes with a simple scene, show you how to import some reference, and we'll look at how the control rig works, do some animation, show you how to add layers, also breaking it down to a single track, also adding some props and parenting. When you open up Unreal, this will be the default layout. We have a viewport, we have a details panel and an outliner panel. So we want to set this up for animation. Coming from Maya, I tend to set it up so it feels and looks a lot more like Maya. So I like to grab my outliner and I put it over to the left side. I'll leave my details panel here because that's more like your channel box. But there is also an anim details panel, which I'll dock over here. We can go to Windows. Up top, you can type sequencer and it will come up here. Generally dock that right down the bottom so it takes up the full lower panel. That's the sequencer there, which is our timeline, but you can see there's no actual timeline here yet. We'll get to that. We also want a content browser, which is basically the file scene browser, which is just up here, or again, we can just type content browser 1. We're going to drag that. I like to drag it over here to the side so it's kind of out of the way. One thing you're going to want to do is invert your middle mouse pan. And the way to do that is we go to Edit, Editor Preferences, and in the search bar, you could type invert, preferably the right way. Scroll down to the bottom and you'll see invert middle mouse pan. Tick that guy on and it will feel just like you're navigating in Maya. In the content browser, I'm going to create a new folder so I can create a new project. Just keep things organized. And I'm going to call this scene example. So in my scene example, I'm going to create another folder and call this sequences. And inside my sequence folder, I'm going to create an actual level sequence. So I'm just going to right click down to cinematics, level sequence. And we're calling this scene example sequence. If I double click on this, you'll notice the sequencer has now changed. And there's an actual timeline with frames that I can scrub along, but I don't have anything in my scene yet. Now there is this button here. And if I click on that, it will open up our curve editor. And since I'm working on a single screen, I'm just going to dock my curve editor next to my timeline. Normally I'd have this on a second screen, so it was a bit bigger. Okay, so now I've got a sphere in my scene and I'm just going to set it some keys so we can see it move from one side of the screen to the other. So I can scrub my timeline, I can see my sphere, I can select my sphere and I can move it around, but because it is not in the sequencer, I can't set any keys on it that will stick. In the outliner, I'm going to grab my sphere. I'm just going to drag and drop it into the sequencer, which then creates a track in the sequencer. And there's a transform track, so you can see the location, rotation, and scale. And now I can set keys on it. So before I do that, a couple of things that I want to do is make sure that this guy is ticked on. That is the auto key. There's another feature I want to turn on over here, and it is keep playhead in playback range while scrubbing, which doesn't make a lot of sense now, but when you've got more complicated scene setups and multiple sequences in the one timeline, if you don't have that ticked on and you go outside your scrubbing range, you can get errors popping in due to things spawning in and out. Keeps your timeline nice and tidy by keeping that on. Next thing I want to do is up the top here, by default, in the viewport, it has snapping turned on. And if I keep snapping on, it's probably not as obvious. If I turn that up to 100, you'll see it pops around, but it also similar for rotations and also for scaling. So I'm just going to turn those off. When they're white, they've turned off. Zero out that location. So now I can actually start to set keys and animate my ball. So I'm going to go to frame 1. Actually, I'm going to just tuck that in. This is frame 1. I'm going to put my ball, my sphere at -400. Am I on the ground or not? That'll be 50. That'll be 50. Fine. I can just hit S, sets the keyframe. Also looking at the curve editor over here, and then if I go to frame, let's go to frame 100, we'll drag this guy over to 400, and I hit play. There you go, my ball ramps up, comes to a stop. Now I've set a couple of keyframes, easy peasy. We can look into the curve editor. When you select your curves, you've got some options with adding extra keys. By default, especially in the current version, this is 5.61 of Unreal, the tween machine lives inside the curve editor. Hit the tween machine drop down and you can see most of the normal tween machine style options. If I grab the slider, it will add a key to whichever side is most interesting. And I can change my handles to linear, so I don't get that ease in and ease out, it's just constant. I'm going to add some folders to my sequencer so I can keep it tidy. So I've got a characters folder, which I'll put my sphere into. I'm going to set a color so it's easier to see. I'm also going to add a folder for cameras. If we wanted to add a camera, click on the camera in the sequencer and it will create a cinematic camera for us. Boink. It's added a whole bunch of extra stuff. So here's our cinema camera actor. I'm going to drag that into the cams folder. You'll also notice that we have these new buttons. If I click that button there, it locks my viewport to that camera. And if I had multiple scenes and multiple cuts, and I click that top one, that will lock all the cinematic cameras to the viewport. Normally when we're animating, we like to see the viewport from the camera, and we like to have another viewport that gets us close to our character. So we're going to open Windows, go to Viewports, add an extra viewport. I'm just going to put those side by side. I select my character and I press F to frame up. So now you can see I've got two viewports which are locked to the cinematic actor. But what I want is, you can see I've got two viewports that are locked to the cinematic actor, but I want to be able to manipulate my right screen so I can get closer and see different angles of my character. The way we do that is we go up the top of the viewport and untick allow cinematic control. Untick that guy, and then we're going to change from being locked to the cinematic camera, and we're going to go to lock to camera cuts. Unselect our specific camera, and this way I can move around my second viewport while my main viewport is still with shot. Now I'm going to pull in a video file, some reference of a bouncing ball, and show you how simple that is. So I'm going to go to my content browser, bouncing ball, and I've made a reference folder here, which is currently empty. I'm just going to drag a video that I shot on my phone into the content browser. Simple as that. If I open that up, double click, we get this viewport, and if I hit open, there you go. There is my tennis ball bouncing. Pause. You can scrub into anywhere in this video you would like. You can make a thumbnail so that you can see which video you've got imported. And I'm just going to close that. Now I'm going to drag this into my scene. I'm going to frame up my video here, and you see that what you get is a an image plane, which is cool, but what we want to do is drag our image plane into our scene. Would you like to disable media player actor? Yes. But now you can see I've got a new track. I'm going to create a new folder. Call that ref. Set a color. Drag my image plane into my ref folder just to keep things clean. And now I'm going to rotate around. Rotate around and just size it up so it's looks okay in my camera. Does need to cache a little bit. I'll slide it in the timeline. But if I play, there we go, doink, doink, doink. So I'm just going to adjust my timeline so it fits my ref a bit better. So now I can go along and plot out some keyframes based on my reference. We've looked at the layout, we've looked at the sequencer or the timeline, how to add some objects to the sequencer and set some keys. Now we're going to look at the sequencer and what is probably one of the more powerful features for Unreal. Normally in something like Maya or Blender, you're working on a single shot at a time, and when you want to change shots, you're loading a new file, whereas in Unreal, once you've opened Unreal, all your shots, your scene, the whole project can exist in the one instance of Unreal. For example, I've taken that bouncing ball concept and I've broken it into 3 separate shots. So if I maximize my screen here and press play, I've got my bouncing ball shot. cuts to a wide, rolling, cuts back into a medium for the settle. Now all of this is happening in 3 separate sequences that are all edited together, kind of like a non-linear editing program like Final Cut or Premiere or DaVinci. We're just hitting F10 to maximize that screen. Now if I go to the sequencer, this is my main sequence here, and the concept of the sequencer is that you have nested sequences within the one sequence. So here is my master sequence. If I double click on that, it goes into my sequence, and you'll see I've got three different blocks here, which are again a single sequence. If I go into this one here, which is shot 1, you'll see here this is actually where I have all my assets. So it's my sphere in my character folder and my camera. And this is where I would edit the individual components. So this is my shot. But then I can go back up to the scene level and I've got 3 shots within my scene. And I can push and pull and move those around. This is more typical of how you would see your sequencer in a production. So let's go into our last shot and we'll add a bit of noise to our camera. Which there's a nice easy way to do that. This is my top camera component. And if I go into my camera here, you'll see there is a transform. If I hit the plus sign next to the transform, I can add an additive layer. So now I have 2 transform layers. The top one I've locked so that it doesn't get affected. And then I can go into my rotations. I don't want roll, I want pitch and yaw. And if I right click there, see here it says override with double Perlin noise. And that's going to add a procedural noise layer. And that's visualized by the little squiggles. And if I play back, it's a little bit too much. So right click, Perlin noise channels, and here you can influence the amplitude. I think I'm going to go down to 0.2 and the frequency. Well, maybe we'll go down to 1 for the frequency. You've got to do that for both. 1 on frequency, 0.2 on amplitude. Let's have a look. Maybe that's a bit too subtle now. There we go. We can see that happening now. F10 to full screen. That looks cool. So even while that's playing, I can jump out to the full sequence. F10 to full screen. And then my last shot has a little bit of noise. Go back into the first shot where I've got the ball actually bouncing. Unreal also has a great built-in arc tracing tool, which is just on the top shelf. If you click the bouncing ball symbol and then you select the bouncing ball, it automatically shows you its arc, which is super handy. Although I don't want my gizmo. You can also grab any of the points, which are any of the keyframes, and adjust it in the shot, in the scene. And all the points get adjusted along with it. Now that we're a little bit more familiar with how the sequencer works and the idea of having nested sequences, let's have a look at the Unreal control rig. In my sequence here, I don't have a camera, but I still have a folder just in case we decide to add one later. I've got a character folder with my mannequin in it, but I don't have a control rig added to my mannequin yet. I also have a reference clip, but we'll come back to that after we've had a look at the control rig. For our mannequin, if your control rig didn't come in automatically, you can click on the plus sign, control rig, and for this we don't want layered, we're just going to filter by skeleton, and I'm choosing the CR for control rig mannequin body. Depending on your project requirements, you might be using a very specific control rig, and that's the one you would choose. But for now, I'm using control rig mannequin body. On the right side, you can see my controls, and on the left side, I have the controls turned off, and if I press G, it puts us into game mode. So if I press G, the controls come on, the controls go off. Being in game mode means it turns all the peripheral things off, like gizmos and your manipulator, and also your lights and things like that. So it's nice to have a clean workspace, but also one where you can see all the controls. This also brings us to the next phase of some of the UI elements. In animation mode, you would normally get all the UI elements, such as the animation details panel, which just gives you a little bit more finesse than the normal details panel when you've selected a animation control. The animation outliner, instead of the normal editor's outliner, which is more of a scene description, the anim outliner will show us all our controls in a big hierarchical stack. But same here in the sequencer. You'll notice that since I've added a control rig, all of the controls are now displayed in the sequencer, which again, you are scrolling for days and it can be a little painful. There's also the anim layers. Works in a similar way. You can add layers to your controls. We also have this great animation specific toolbox. There's a couple of things on here that are super helpful. Hit the select button. It will mean that the only thing that is selectable are the controls. Very handy for when you've got a lot of stuff in your scene. It's also in the viewport. It is the same little button that's up here. If I deselect that, then I can select the floor and the sky dome, and that stuff becomes pretty frustrating when you've got a lot of things in your scene. There's also a select toggle next to it. This guy here limits your selection to whatever is in your sequencer. So I can still select my mannequin because he's part of the sequence, but I can't select the ground or the sky, which is another handy selection. If we take a little bit of a closer look at our mannequin here, in the anim outliner, if I select the global control, and then I'm in the anim details panel, there's a few toggles here. You can see his arms are currently in FK, but if I scroll, select the global control, and I can toggle the arms into IK. Same with the legs, I can toggle the legs into FK. There's also neck and spine toggles for those things. And here in the sequencer, if I hit F10, it turns on filtering. It will only show what I have selected. It will filter to that control, which is very handy rather than having all the controls visible down there. Filter it out, select my hand, and I can just concentrate on that one piece in the sequencer there. But I'm going to jump out and I'm going to look at my ref So I've imported some ref here. Let's see, it's just me doing a bit of a monster walk coming in. Actually, I'll probably fast forward this so you don't have to listen to me. Now with the power of movie magic, we have a animated piece looking pretty cool. From here, if we wanted to make a layer adjustment, we can find our control rig in the sequencer, hit the plus sign, and we can then go additive, which gives us our original animation there. Find it's a good habit to lock that track. And then anything we do on our additive layer, we can change his, put his shoulders up, or turn his head, look up to the sky, just do something a little weird. And if I set that key, then all of a sudden he's looking up, bewildered. And I can mute that layer. So we go back to our original, turn it back on, there's our layer. And I can bake all that back down. We can bake it to the control rig. So now I've just baked it to the one control rig in my scene. Or we can right click on our top node and bake to animation sequence. So here I'll find my control rig or my level example, control rig example motion. I've got a folder here called bake sequence. And what I'm going to call this is monster walk look up underscore Aiden. And I'm just putting my name there so it's easier to find later. You'll understand in a second. If I hit OK, export. Now if I delete my control rig, you see my mannequin's gone back to a default pose. So back to my mannequin. If I hit plus, animation, and I type in Aiden and I go monster walk lookup, it's added an animation track with no control rig that's just baked in. And from here I can add control rig, but if I tick layered this time and my control rig mannequin body, it adds the control rig but with no keys. So it's completely blank, and from here, whatever I do with my control rig is just an additive to the motion underneath. We're making him do a real zombie walk. He's not looking too good, but I hope you get the concept. Now let's have a look at what's probably more of a typical example that you'll come across if you're working on a production. We have a character that has animation. We have a camera. And he's doing an action that looks like he's pulling his sword out and doing a couple of swipes. We have a shield, we have a helmet, and we have a sword. So we're going to constrain and attach these props to our guy. So we'll start with adding a control rig and adjusting his pose slightly. In the sequencer, I have my characters top level, hitting the plus sign to add a new track, control rig, layered control rig, mannequin body. Here, control rig's been added. I just want to bring his shoulders up. So I've adjusted his pose. Now I'm going to attach the helmet. So I've got my sword, shield, and helmet in my props folder. So I'm going to select my helmet. Go. He's looking pretty fashionable. And to attach it to my mannequin, I'm going to add another track. I'm going to add an attached track. I'm attaching it to Manny Simple, which is my character. And then it comes up with a list of bones. We can add it to his head, but what it's done is it has pushed it off into a weird spot because it's given it an offset. What we need to do, we can delete that. When we go to add attach, we want to click preserve current. So then if we go back, attach, add to many. This is like constraining with an offset. Click the head. We didn't bounce off in a weird spot. And now if we play our animation, there we go. Our little knight now has a wonderful helmet. We'll do the same with the shield. Nice. Get our attached track. We've already got preserve current on. New binding. Well, not new binding. We want to go to existing binding, which is many. And we can use one of the hand grip sockets. It's his left hand, so we're going to go hand grip left. And now that is attached to his left hand. But you'll see that it doesn't attach the whole time because in the track here, there's a gap. Because we went down a little bit when we attached the shield, which is simple enough. We can just extend that to the first frame. We should send it a couple of frames earlier. Now he's got his shield. Next, he needs a sword. Sword's a little trickier because he's not holding the sword at the start. Puts his hand on it, and then he's holding the sword for the rest of it. So we're going to work in two sections. We're going to use the constraints while it's on his hip. And then we can either use the attach, or we can use another constraint for the second half. But let's find a good spot that we think is the middle ground, sort of about the frame, to unsheath his sword. I'm going to hit G to turn the controls off because they're a little bit in the way.
Let's see.
I'd say it's frame 15 or 16. Is the one we want. Let's go frame 16, so then we'll grab our sword. Okay, from that point, we're over in the animation toolbox, and here expand the constraints. Constraints selected, which is our sword, but then we need to select our parent. Our parent is Manny, And then we're going to go for pelvis as our driver, as our parent. So we have our sword selected, pre-selected our parent, which is the pelvis, and we hit the little plus sign, which will add the constraint. We want to add a parent constraint, maintaining offset. The rest of it we can leave as default. Hit create. If we open up our sword, we have a constraint just here, and you'll see that from that frame onwards, it's now attached to his hip. So what we want to do is grab that constraint, drag it back to a subframe before it starts. Now it's on his hip the whole time. So what we can do, we can select our sword, go to our frame 16, and you can see in the constraints drop down, there's our constraint, and we can add another keyframe. And from that keyframe on, the constraint is off. So now at our frame 16, we can add an attachment and attach for many, and it will be the right hand grip. So for our sword, we've got a constraint working for the first 16 frames, and then it swaps over to the hand for the rest of the shot. Cool. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.